Yeah.
Eric Weinstein, you have been hearing him the past couple of weeks on In the Mind of Frase podcast. It's all about interviews, experiences, and entrepreneurs. Everybody has loved him. So I would definitely say, check him out if you've been curious in shamanic healing, if you wanted to try a ceremony. And I am thinking about putting together a group, so I will keep you posted on that. Today is part 3 of my interview with Eric and my exploration of shamanic healing. And it involves actually a tapping ceremony. So it's taking a different turn, if you will. But today, I had never heard of tapping. I had no clue what it is. But tapping is used by shamanic healers, by therapists, by many, many different alternative health practitioners as a way to deal with things like grief, impatience, almost any human emotion. And tapping is a series of self-taps that you do on your head, on your body, on your hands, on your heart, and various movements that Eric takes you through in order to lessen that emotion that you're feeling and that is controlling your body. So today, I wanted to explore grief. And my father passed away 20 years ago this past summer to esophageal and stomach cancer when I was 20 years old. And growing up, I had amazing parents. They were super fun, and they were 2 parents who really wanted to have kids. So when my father passed away, it really blew up our family unit. It was incredibly sad, as anyone knows, especially any of you guys listening who lost a parent, when the parent was very young and when you were very young. It is a truly traumatic thing that affects so many aspects of your life for the rest of your life. So here I am 20 years later, and lots of times I find myself being extremely, almost overly emotional still about his passing. So I had said to Eric, I would love to try a tapping ceremony around grief, and Eric agreed. So we are taking you through a tapping ceremony that you can even do by yourself. I didn't even realize that, but more on that. So take a listen to a tapping ceremony on grief. Okay, tapping. Tell me about tapping. Who is it for? What do you do?
Well, tapping is kind of I'm going to say the slang phrase for energy psychology. And energy psychology and energy medicine are basically a combination of Eastern practices like acupuncture and acupressure and Western psychology, or let's say Western health. Okay. And there are a bunch of different forms of energy psychology, the best known of which is EFT. And that's the emotional freedom technique, which is not to be confused with another thing called EFT that is practiced by mental health professionals. Okay. But at any rate, there's EFT, there's something called thought field therapy that's also been highly researched. And both of them work on the idea that by stimulating acupressure and acupuncture points in the body, you can change someone's emotional state or their belief system. And so it works in much the same way that acupuncture does, except that this is for your mental state and emotional state.
Wow. So once you do, like today, we're going to explore grief around my dad, and we're going to use tapping for that. Right. And I'm assuming it's to release that grief, right? To heal that grief.
That's correct. It is to release it. And it's based on the idea that a lot of emotions are stored in the physical body.
And so when we do this, or anyone's doing tapping that comes to see you, do you have one session are you healed? Do you have to do this multiple times? Does any time that emotion comes up, you can use tapping?
There's a lot of stuff online. And so, for instance, if you go online and just look up tapping for anxiety, you'll find a lot of resources out there. Okay. And in fact, when I started out, one of the things I asked a psychologist who uses this extensively was, why should I learn how to do this when there's so much stuff online? Mm-hmm. And he said the generic tapping processes work for 80% of the people 80% of the time. The rest of the folks need a practitioner to guide them. So if you go to Dawson Church has done some really great work in this area. At any rate, there are some reliable people out there who have done really good work. And the only downside is that sometimes when you start tapping on an issue, the emotion will spike before it gets better. In other words, it'll get worse before it gets better.
Okay.
And that can be scary. And of course, if you're using it for something that's truly traumatic in your background, it maybe could even be a little dangerous. Now, I'm hyper cautious about this. There are books out there, for instance, called Tapping for Trauma.
Okay.
That you can buy and use.
Okay.
But I generally tell clients this is the kind of thing where you want to work with a practitioner.
Got it. Yes. Yes, I don't think I want to try this at home by myself. Okay. So what are we going to do? What do I need to do first?
Well, I would like you to, first of all, just tell me what it is you would like to change about the grief that you have for your father now.
I think I would like it to be less about sadness and missing him and more about celebrating his life and knowing that he would just be thrilled that my brother and I are doing really well and my mom's healthy. So I think shifting it, and I'm already getting like a little emotional, but I think just shifting it from such sadness to more just celebrating life, you know?
And I think realistically that is what our loved ones would want for us. But, you know, we have this cultural belief that if we're not walking around feeling lousy, then we're not honoring the person who has passed. And the reality is most of the time the way we would honor someone who's passed is, like you said, by living your life. By doing the kinds of things they want you to do. Most of the time, they don't want you dragging yourself around. They want you to remember the positive aspects of their having been in your life. So the first thing I would like you to do is just close your eyes for a moment.
Okay.
And I would like you to just feel what your level of grief is at the moment. And let's use a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 is what you're looking for, that sense of, I know he's gone, and I can celebrate the positives without feeling the sadness. And 10 is maybe how you felt when you first lost him.
Okay.
And just tell me, the number is not super important because we're looking for a relative measure. Just tell me what number pops up for you.
I'd say 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take you through a tapping sequence.
Okay.
And we're going to do what's called a sandwich.
Okay.
And your listeners are not going to be able to see what we're doing, of course.
Okay.
But I'm going to take you through some tapping points. And the reason it's called a sandwich is because we're going to do some tapping, and then in between, I'm going to take you through some eye motions.
Okay.
And then we're going to do the tapping again. And while we're doing the tapping, I want you to feel the emotion. I don't want you to dive into it.
Okay.
I don't want you to go into the swimming pool of grief.
Okay.
But I do want you to feel it a little bit just so that we know what we're releasing in the body.
Got it.
And so let's start, and you're just going to follow me. Let's first tap or rub on the inside of the eyebrows.
Okay.
And now outside of the eyes. And now under the eyes.
Okay.
And now 2 to 6 inches under one or both armpits. And now under the collarbones right next to the breastbone. And now the inside of the index fingers, of the little fingers. And now under the collarbones again. And now the inside of the index fingers. It's easiest if you do this. Inside. So you're going to go cross and now tap. Got it. And now under the collarbones again. And now we're going to spend about half a minute tapping on the gamut spot on the back of the hand here. And by the way, we're using a very specific sequence that works for grief, depression or loneliness. And now under the collarbones again. And now I'd like you to start tapping your karate chop point together. And first with your eyes closed, that's fine. And then with your eyes open but not looking directly at me. And now without moving your head, looking down as far as you can to your left. Without moving your head, looking down as far as you can to your right. And without straining your eyes and without moving your head, taking your eyes to the ceiling and continue to tap as you make a big circle. Continuing to tap as you make a big circle in the opposite direction. And now I'd like you to either have a piece of music in your head or sing the scales or hum a tune. Are you ready? Mm-hmm. And eyes open at the ceiling. Okay. And now I'd like you aloud to count up by twos.
2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12.
Okay. And now we're going to go back and tap that sequence again. So I want you to try to feel the grief. And the reason I say try is it will probably be harder. So tell me.
Definitely is harder.
Okay. So tell me when you are feeling it to the extent that you can.
Eric takes me through the ceremony or the tapping sequences, and then we do it one more time. And Eric comes back and wants to know how my grief is when I check in with him.
And stop tapping. Close your eyes. Tell me where you are now.
I'd say no grief. None. It's 0.
Okay.
I'd have to really think about it to bring it back up.
Okay. So eyes open. We're probably done.
Wow. It's amazing. It's like, it is weird. When you were saying, even after we did the first session, when then you're asking to think about it, it's really funny feeling. Like you can't really bring up the sadness. Like that is very wild feeling. Hard to describe.
And when it works, it can work very quickly. Now, there are times when you need to give a client homework, say, hey, do this 3 times a day. Or in your particular case, you were ready to do it. You weren't hung up on the idea that dad wants me to be sad. And so when people have constructs like that, sometimes we have to go under the surface and ask the question, why are you holding on to the grief? And so with other things, for example, there may be that you had a parent who was grieving all the time you were growing up, maybe was sad all that time, and your way of maintaining an emotional connection to them is to hold on to that feeling. And so when that kind of thing happens, that's when you really need to go under the surface and figure out why are you holding on to something that doesn't serve you.
Got it. Yeah, and it doesn't serve me. And he was not a sad person and loved life and had a great time. And yeah, he would completely want me to let all that go. So, that was definitely when you're doing the tapping, it's amazing how quickly those feelings just disappear.
Yeah. And look, that has been part of the problem, I think, with energy psychology is that there are times when conventional psychology doesn't work that well. Okay. And energy psychology works so rapidly that it seems almost unbelievable. And the reality is that the professional organization I belong to, the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology, is about 80% licensed practitioners. And when I've asked those people, why, with all your training in conventional psychology or conventional therapy, do you use this? They talk about how efficient it is and how effective it is. So the majority of folks, I shouldn't say the majority of folks who have adopted this are conventional practitioners, but I happen to have a lot of respect for this because of how many people know the conventional approach and are using this instead, or using it as a additional form of therapy.
You guys, I hope you enjoyed this tapping ceremony with Eric Weinstein. HollowReedHealing.com is Eric's website. He's taking on new clients. If you're trying to give up smoking, if you want to try a shamanic healing ceremony, if you want to try a tapping ceremony, Eric does all of that. I definitely recommend seeing him. Also, if you love this podcast, I would ask you to do two things. If you could go to iTunes, hit 5 stars, leave me a review, and tell me what you like. And then the best way that people discover me is by sharing. So if you could share this podcast with someone who has never heard of me, that would be the best gift that you could give me. I hope you guys are enjoying these new podcasts by the Hey Frase Productions, which is me, and so much more to come. I'll see you guys next week on In the Mind of Frase.
What's the phrase that you hear every day? Hey, Frase. What's the phrase that you hear every day? Hey, Frase. What's the phrase that you hear?